Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, the CEO and founder of Kismet Ventures. I am a coach, a John Maxwell certified coach, and have a segment on YouTube called Munira's Musings. I am on the prowl these days to find people who are instilling values in other people, and they're helping them. So I help these people I expose them and then promote them on my channel, which is on YouTube, and then I share the links on LinkedIn and Facebook. Our guest today is Susan Yockey. Hi, Susan.
Hi. Hi, Munira.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm very humbled that you decided to do this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm glad. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, where should I start?
At the beginning, if you want.
Okay, well, I'll give you some background so people can get related to who I am. My name's Susan Yockey. I'm a mom of 5. I have 4 adult boys who are ages 20 to 27. And then Spirit blessed us with my daughter, who is now 4, 15 years later. So I'm 44 and I'm married to, I believe, my soulmate. We are on 23 years. So that's just the little piece of it. I'm also a transformation and mindset coach. I've been coaching now for 8 years. And my training and development comes from a program that's called Landmark Worldwide. And I developed myself in their programs to not knowing that I'd actually become a coach, but to become what was known as a Landmark Forum leader. And it's just only been in the last 4 years that I realized I'm coaching everybody. People were always just coming to me. And so I decided, wow, I get goosebumps thinking about it. This is what I love to do. And so I started my business coaching people. And just in the past year, I also became a radio host, podcast host. So I'm also do what you do. I interview other entrepreneurs, authors, coaches from around the world on my radio show, which is called A New Day with Susan.
That's awesome. So you said you have a 4-year-old daughter?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Right after 4 boys, it's just awesome.
It's definitely been very interesting, especially because I raised my boys unconsciously. And now I feel blessed to have an opportunity to raise a child consciously. I forgot to mention that I'm also a grandmother of 2 girls with a 3rd girl on the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can relate because I have 3 daughters and then I have a son.
Well, if I ever need any tips or anything, I'll definitely give you a shout out.
Thank you. Yeah, so my children are grown too, and I have grandkids as well. And
nice.
I am blessed. I am very blessed with that. But so let's talk about your Landmark Forum.
Okay.
So you said that you started with Landmark. Did you take those courses in the beginning and then became a coach? I mean, take me through that journey.
Sure. So I guess to kind of get related to why I even did the Landmark Forum in the first place, and I'm not I do not work for them at all. I just want to make sure people know that I'm not certified by them. I dove deep into their programs to be developed and trained in the distinctions of what it means to be a human being. And before that journey began, I was experiencing it probably it started in 2005. I had started experiencing lower back pain. And I went to the doctor like anybody else would, and I was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease and bone spurs and arthritis. Basically told there was nothing they could do. It would just progress over time. However, what else was happening was my world around me that as I knew it, was falling apart. In my mind, my relationships were deteriorating. My children were out doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. And I felt like I failed as a woman, as a mother, as a spouse, and as a daughter. And by 2009, the pain went from being just probably a pain level of 5 to an excruciating 10 and beyond. So all I could think about was how much pain I was in. And then it also creeped up into my shoulder blades, which later in 2010 was diagnosed as fibromyalgia. And then I was experiencing pain in my stomach, which was diagnosed as fibroid tissue. And I was seeking, because I got to a point where I was either going to end my life or run away from it all. And I had nowhere to turn. So just to back up a little bit, I had just, somebody turned me on to the documentary, The Secret. And that was the first time I was blown away, because I thought, wow, like, if that's all it is, then I'm attracting this stuff to me. And so I started researching it and following all the people that were in the documentary and reading their books. But there was still this, I was still struggling. I was still suffering and all this pain, and I had nowhere to turn. So then I went to a non-denominational church, and every Sunday for probably the first 3 months, I just cried. It's because it sounded like they were speaking to me and speaking what was going on to me in my life. But I still just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, until one day a man came up to me. He put his hand on my shoulder and hands me a tiny piece of paper and looks me in the eyes, and he says, "You're going to be okay." So fast forward a couple of months, I'm sitting in this man's home in what is called the Landmark Introduction. And I was listening to people's stories of what they got from their participation in the program, which is a 3.5-day program where it transformed their lives. And what I saw possible for me was the possibility of having a different life than the one that I was having. So I didn't have the money, and my friend helped me register. I paid. And here I am 3 months later in my weekend in Seattle, Washington, because I live in Montana. So it's like a 10-hour drive there. And by that Saturday, it was like a ton of bricks hit me. Everything that I had been reading about all of a sudden like made sense to me. And I realized I really am the cause of my pain and suffering and the way that my world was showing up around me. So I knew what I needed to do, and it was to take massive action. And that action called me forth to tell the truth to who at that time was my boyfriend of 14 years. And he was back at home, and I called him and told him about 2 secrets that I had been withholding from him. One was I had an abortion with our first child in the beginning of our relationship. And then the second one was I had cheated on him in a one-night stand. So you could about imagine how rage he was. And let's just say that by the end of my Landmark Forum that weekend, I got the coaching to just listen and not resist whatever it was that was there for him. And there was no promises of what kind of outcome, just to listen. And by that Tuesday night, my boyfriend proposed to me and just could not express how much he loved me, and that he wasn't going to let what had happened 9 years ago get in the way of our relationship. And he just that same night registered into the Landmark Forum as a gift to him from my friend, because it was his birthday. And needless to say, here I am 8 years later, and there's many programs in there that they offer, and I done like a ton of them. I did the curriculum for living, I was an introduction leader for about 3 years, and I also coached the program. So a lot of that was just giving. But I was receiving in return from the continuous giving. And it's just been an amazing journey.
So how is the pain now, your shoulder?
I am actually pain-free.
That is awesome.
Yeah. It was like what was possible for me when I told my husband the truth, even though in that moment it felt like painful because I told the truth. As what happened though that was miraculous was not only was I free from the constraints of my past, but my body no longer held on to that pain and suffering. And with some supplementation and the continuous work, I have not experienced that kind of pain since.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
So do you think, I mean, you've gone through it, so do you think that as we think about the pain all the time, that we attract it to us instead of letting it go and just telling it, you know what, I don't need you, just go away? I mean, my way of saying to the pain, just go away.
Well, what I learned was in the beginning, because it would come and go. So what I noticed was, as I was doing the deep healing work, what I noticed, I would start talking to it. And as soon as I'd notice pain, I'd be paying attention to what I was speaking about with somebody or the kind of thoughts that I were having, and it would subside. And I was like, I wonder if this pain, if I'm actually creating this. And so the first thing is don't resist it, because I really started to believe, wow, my pain is actually talking to me. And and as time went on, as I continued to work through and heal the old traumas from my life, because I grew up where I was sexually abused, I was raped, I was beaten on. And as I healed all of that, the pain got less and less. And so, yes, I agree. I think there's, when you're dealing with yourself spiritually, emotionally, you really have access to freeing yourself up from physical ailments.
Wow, that's profound. That's very profound. I come across different people who have gone through this thing, and they tell me that they attract a certain kind of thing, and I tell them, don't think about it, because you keep letting it go into motion. So you dove into the teachings of Landmark. Your husband now is also a Landmark
graduate, yes.
Graduate. And so you have a wonderful and healing, healthy relationship.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. It's juicy.
I like that word. So how did you take what you learned and do and make that change to take with the knowledge that you have and make it, reinvent yourself, if you will, to do what you did today? And what is it that you do today?
So what I really loved about the work, and that kept coming up for me, was the importance of healing the stuff from our past. And so I really dug deep into the distinctions of what that was, which is having the freedom from the constraints of our past. When I realized that our past is truly linked to how we show up in our life today, and just notice when I was applying the work to myself, just paying attention to the process. And so I actually have a program, it's my one-on-one coaching program, where we actually look at the mindset, the foundation of what the mindset first is. Because I really believe people don't know that their mind, it has the old programs, and that's what's keeping us recreating a future that we're living into from the past. So once you're able to put the past in the past where it belongs, then you have, what do you think? Like a new clearing, a whole new space to create from. And in that space, something new arises for you. And then when you create from that space, that's what brings forth the actions that you can take in like your goals or whatever. But then I realized, why am I still not achieving my goals? And so I started digging a little bit deeper into like neuroscience, which has nothing to do with Landmark. You know, neuroscience. I don't practice NLP, but I've been learning about that. Started doing more research about habits and the limitations of our mind and the old programs and how they're actually affecting us in our life today. So my program was created based on some of the distinctions from Landmark's programs, but as well from being pulled from like John Ashraf or Tony Robbins, Jim Britt. Like, it just comes from a variety of great thought leaders' information. And then I just created and developed my own program out of that. And the first step is to just have the basic foundation of understanding how the mind works and why it works the way it works, and getting our minds wrapped around integrity. Because integrity really is like this law of the universe for people to work from. And when you're lacking integrity, it causes a lot of unworkability. It could be unworkability in your health. It could be unworkability in your relationships with people, yourself. And when you can start to powerfully deal with that, then you have a place to work from when you're creating those resolutions or those goals that you want to achieve.
Wow. So how long is your program?
I offer a 6-month or a 12-month. So it just depends on how big your commitment is to what it is that you want to achieve. I work with people who've experienced a lot of trauma, and then I also work with people who may not have experienced trauma, but they meet that ceiling, that block, and they're just not able to push beyond that. And that's because we have what are called hidden blocks or hidden limitations. And it's through the patterns that I'm able to, through listening to what they're saying, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like an intuition. I can hear what it is that they're committed to behind what it is that they're committed to, and what those blocks are that are stopping them in moving forward in what it is that they want to achieve. So once and I don't do the work, I'm just guiding them through this conversation, and I'm more of just listening. And when I hear something, I can point to it, but they discover it themselves. And it's like an instant aha moment, like, oh my God, wow, within a conversation that could last maybe be 30 minutes. It's something they did not see before. And then that, because of that, they get to be responsible for maybe the impact that it's had on themselves or their loved ones or people that they've worked with. Because we have a way of being, and if we're not being consistent with our authentic self, there's an impact that it has on people around us. And so I like to say that we're being self-absorbed or being selfish. And when we can see what we're doing and be responsible for that way of being, then we're able to create miracles, literally.
You know, you bring such a good point, because we as people, and I myself as well, because we have so much trauma, if you will, and we have our past. And they say that the past will shape the future, but it does. In a funny sort of way, it does, but only it's not a good way. I was a little girl a long time ago. And I was learning in geography that there are some places in Kenya where I grew up where they till the land because in phases, right? So they plant potatoes, and on the same plant, once the potato has the crop is harvested, they till the land again and they use another vegetable or fruit or something. So not fruit, but I think vegetables, because the thing is, it's the land is constantly giving, but they till it so that it's giving different things across, around the year.
Yeah.
And so then they call it rotational cropping, crop rotation or something to that nature, now that you say that. But that's what you were talking about, because you said that, we constantly are trying to clean up, but we don't. But if we don't till our past, if you use the terminology of the soil, if you don't till the past and get the weeds out,
Yep.
we create nothing but bad earth, if you will. So then the ground is not as fertile.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I love that.
So if we don't clear the land for the future, we keep bringing up the bad stuff, right? And then we get all the weeds and whatever. So that was just something that came to mind when, I don't know, I've not done geography for a long time, but this came up.
Yeah.
But my thinking is that we all have that baggage, if you will. We all have it. So in your opinion, shouldn't this be something that every adult should go through?
In my opinion, I think every adult should definitely take a deeper look, especially if you notice. It's all about just being aware, For example, if you want a better relationship, a better communication in your relationship, well, if you're the one that's pointing the finger all the time, look where the other three are pointing back and become aware of who you're being in that. So like, I'm not saying that the other person has no part in it. However, if you just focus on you, so for example, and I love how you use the analogy of tilling up the ground and pulling the weeds, because it's really what you're doing. And I think people have a fear about what are they going to till up, but there's nothing to be afraid of, because you're not reliving the trauma. You're just dealing with the stories that you tell yourself about that trauma. So for example, I can be in the kitchen cooking, and my husband would come into the kitchen and the first thing out of his mouth would be, did you happen to read the recipe or follow the instructions? So the way I heard that, or the way it occurred to me through a filter from the past, is he must think I'm stupid, or I would get defensive. And to me, before, I would have never noticed that. It was just just the way I was being. I would just be defensive and a jerk back, and then he'd leave the room and be upset. However, because of the training that I have and what I teach, I'm able to see it instantly and say, I can step back and say, oh, I'm being defensive. I wonder what that's about. So then I go through my own process. So the first step is being aware of how you're being with another being, because they're always going to be a trigger from that other person. And if you can catch I'm being defensive, or you have this loss of power, or a loss of self-expression, or a loss of peace of mind, that's the first indicator there's something over here that you haven't dealt with. And it could be something small. So for me, when I stepped back and I noticed that I was feeling that way or having these thoughts about him, I immediately began to go to work. And what I discovered for myself was I had a story from 5th grade, which was kids used to call me stupid. They were bullying me. And over time, I believed them. So what I would do as an adult is compensate by constantly learning things to feel like I was smarter. So I would be snappy with him, because the way I would hear it was he's saying I'm stupid. And so as soon as I got that for myself, I just go to him and I'm like, wow, like I've been a jerk to you. I get really defensive when you point something out, and really all you're trying to do is help me. So now when he walks in the room, I immediately can see it as he's just trying to help me or be supportive, and I can play with it and have fun with it and take away the old way of being.
That makes sense. That's a good example. Thank you. No, but I've heard of Landmark. It's come up about a few times last year as well. Mm-hmm. And I've had a Landmark coach call me a few times, and the time just isn't right for me right now. Mm-hmm. But eventually, yes, I think my husband and I, we need to do that as well. So
yeah. But yeah, it's an amazing transformational and performance program. And it's helped 2.2 million people.
I mean, I believe it's growing as well because they keep adding new things, right?
Yeah, yeah. I know it'd be awesome to be able to get certified in their programs. But yeah, I just deliver it how I learned it without recreating what they do. And it's been effective with my clients and the steps that I've created based on the knowledge that I've pulled together from the different sources.
So if you don't mind, tell me about your podcast, your radio show.
Sure. Yep. So it was probably last fall, I got approached by a gal who was starting it's Montana's first digital radio. And I was like, sure, I'd love to. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I just stepped into it. And so my show is called A New Day with Susan. And I invite people like yourself to come onto the show and to inspire and empower people first with your story, because I believe people relate to people through their stories. They're more memorable that way. And because of whatever you learned, you can share from your own experience like I'm doing with you. And I have these tools. So any speaker that comes on the show, they have some story or experiences in their life that they can share that inspires or empowers people. And it offers tips and tools so that they can achieve the goals in their life that they want to achieve. And I've got speakers that come on from around the world, and it's accessible online. And I think that's really amazing. So not only are we bringing Montana to the world, but my show brings the world to Montana. And they've recently, so the name of the company is KGRT Treasure State Radio. And they recently sistered with another radio station that's a local one where you can tune into your car. And so, and that's how I got started with radio.
And so your segment is once a week?
It airs twice a week. But it actually airs every day, but the new interviews come on twice a week.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, that's awesome. So
yeah.
Do you work out of your home?
Oh, yeah.
So I have one more question. I have many questions. But so when you started the show, when you finished your training, you did some looking out. When did you realize that what you're learning and what you're figuring out can help other people? How long did it take to start the business?
Well, believe it or not, when I was the Tuesday evening of my Landmark Forum in 2010, it was at the end of my forum at the evening session where people just kept coming up to me. They couldn't believe that they were sitting there Saturday and I was in front of like 200 and something people in my forum and bawling my eyeballs out and just shared what I had just did on the phone with my husband. And people were on the edges of their seat, like they couldn't wait till Tuesday night to find out what transpired from that day. And that end of the evening, people their guests plus the people that were in the forum. So that ended up being like another 100 or so people. So there was about 300 and something people on Tuesday evening. And I went up to share what transpired, and people were just coming to me. There was one girl who came up to me and just instantly started crying and said, "Can I have a hug?" And so I wrapped my arms around her and I said, "Everything's going to be okay." And she said, "Because I so can relate to your story. It's almost like you talked about me. And because of that, I registered tonight." And it was like this overwhelmingly feeling of all of a sudden, like a knowing. All of a sudden, I know what I want to do in my life. But it wasn't until 4 years ago that I realized that I want to take this a step further and actually turn it into my own business and offer coaching for people and be a speaker.
Okay. And you've been successful, and you speak in front of forums as well, right? Not just on the radio, but you go and speak.
Yeah, I actually have not done any work with Landmark for about 4 years now. And most of my speaking is on my radio and doing interviews like this. And I'll be speaking in front of, it's the Women's Expo of Montana in October. I do more of the coaching. That's where my focus is, because I feel like I make a bigger difference there. And then I do local workshops, and I do a lot of online stuff as well.
Great. Well, you know, what I'm taking from you is that don't hesitate. You know, learn from your past, weed out the weeds, and create a new you. So you completely reinvented yourself.
Yes.
And, you know, in most cases, you know, you have a wonderful story, because in most other cases, you know, the men would shun the women if they were to speak out. And most women who have had secrets, who harbor such secrets in their heart, don't say a lot, because they know of the wrath that will follow.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of this documentary. It's called The Shadow Effect. And it's so true. People carry a lot of shame and guilt, and a lot of it's because they're afraid of to share those traumatic stories. And the fact of the matter is we're being called to rise up and share these stories and help as many people as we can help, especially right now. And the healing that comes along with sharing our story is so powerful, because you're contributing to another human being who just might find hope in what you're saying.
You know, you bring up a good point, because for a long time, I too myself kept everything in there. Yeah. And a few months ago, we were at a retreat, not a retreat, but it was a seminar and an influence summit, if we call it. And we shared a room. I shared a room with 3 fantastic ladies. And one of them said, "Munira, you have a story." And it's not like we knew each other when we got there. We had spoken a little bit, but we had never spoken outside. You know, we never met one-on-one. This was our first meeting. But when we were talking about things and they found out what my stories were, I shared a few things, and they said, "You are going to not tell anybody." And what Mary Beth said to me was, "Munira, there's going to be somebody who's going to come and tell you, why didn't you share this story with me? It would have helped me." And that hit me very profoundly. It just hit me and took away my breath. And I said, okay, so now I'm in the process of writing my story, because we all have, I think everybody has a story, and our past should shape us, but we have to remove the weeds, like you said.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, the message that I'm taking from this interview is, because, you know, we have to clear the clutter.
And that's the name of my programs. Rewrite Your History, How to Heal the Past, Having the Courage to Move Beyond Your Past. And it takes courage just to get out of bed some days for people, you know. It takes courage to just do what you're doing the interviews, and it takes courage to say those things that are unsaid that you want to say. And it's been a process, but just 1 minute or moment by moment is all we can focus on.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing this, Susan. I really, really appreciate it. I am humbled for your time, and I appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you. For those people who are watching, please like, subscribe to our channel, and enjoy this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.